Show. Welcome, friends. Welcome back to the kitchen. Welcome back to Sunday morning and the Old Cookbook Show. A couple weeks ago, we did a recipe from 1829 from this cookbook, Dods Cookery, Mrs. Dods Cookery. 1829 Scotland. That's the 4th edition, so it would have been in earlier editions. It would have gone back farther than 1829. For Scotch Diet Cake. I really liked it. It was eggs, whipped, sugar, tiny little bit of flour. There was no leavening to it. It really was just eggs, sugar, and flour. I don't think there's anything else in it. Oh, there's lemon. A little bit of lemon and a little bit of cinnamon for flavoring. So we're going to fast forward to 100 years later. This is from the 1920s. The new Edwardsburg Recipe Book. It is advertising ephemera put out by the Canada Starch Company Limited in Montreal. They had plants across Canada, and they were big corn. They produced corn flour, corn starch, corn sugars, corn oils. They produced them on a massive scale. They had the rights to American brands to sell them in Canada, so they made things like Mazola, they made Caro, corn syrup. They had their own branding as well. Massive company. And when I was a little kid, they had a plant in Cornwall, Ontario. My mom's family was from along the St. Lawrence. We'd go to visit family in the summertime along the St. Lawrence. We'd go to Cornwall. We'd go to the Canada Starch Company store and load up on corn syrup and stuff for my grandfather. So anyway, all of that to say, today we're going to do a recipe out of this called the Casco Potato Flour Sponge Cake. And I know that I just talked about them being big corn. They also did potato starch. And I do believe that this recipe could be made with potato starch, corn starch, or rice flour. Those three certainly interchangeable, and if you're in a pinch and you don't have any of those, regular all-purpose flour in place of potato starch. This one starts out, we treat the eggs slightly differently, so I'm going to separate the whites and the yolks. Whites into the copper bowl, yolks into the glass bowl, and in goes the second yolk, and give that a bit of a beating. Just 2 eggs, not a whole lot to work with. In goes the sugar next. And this is simply an updated, simplified version of that earlier sponge, of that earlier Scottish or Scotch Diet Cake. You're not going to beat the eggs quite as long, but we are going to beat them separately. We're still going to beat together a meringue here in the copper bowl, but we're going to use baking powder for most of the leavening. And so what's happened in that 100-year gap is that baking powder and baking soda have become commercially available to everybody. Much easier to get your hands on. There were earlier chemical leaveners, and people mention them all the time. There was, different types of salts and hartshorn and things like that. Those show up sparingly in English cookery books. And I'm specifically talking about English language cookery books, the cookbooks that I collect. I have a couple of German language and French language cookbooks where those chemical leaveners prior to 1850, the hartshorn and the salts, are used a lot more. But in English cookery, it just wasn't a thing. Lots of theories why, but who knows? Who really knows? Okay, so those yolks and the sugar, that has beat together really nicely. So next up, copper bowl, and we'll beat the meringue. Okay, so the egg whites in the copper bowl, they beat up quite quickly. You can't overbeat your egg whites if you're doing it in a copper bowl. They don't become as stiff as they do if you do it in a glass bowl with an electric mixer. But you don't run the risk of them separating. You know how you get the really light foam that becomes dry, and then you get that layer of water underneath? They've separated at that point. You've beat them too far. That's not going to happen with a copper bowl. There's a chemical process that happens here, and they stay whipped up longer. The foam is stable a much longer period of time. Now, the diet cake, we did this beating process all in one bowl and we beat it for 20 minutes. Although I didn't because I used the stand mixer over here. I'm going to say you could treat this exactly the same. If you've got a stand mixer or an electric mixer, don't separate your eggs. Just beat them all together until you get a nice yellow whipped cream. Don't go through this process. Not necessary at all. So, now at this point we would take the egg whites and we would fold them carefully into the yolks. But the recipe says to beat them in, which is kind of where I look at this and say, you know what? There really is no need to separate the two. You could just beat them all as one thing and just do a really good job. If you want to know what it should look like, just go back to the diet cake recipe from a couple of weeks ago. The yolk and the whites beaten together there just looked absolutely fantastic. In fact, they kind of looked like that. So, yeah, pretty much exactly the same. Now, here is our potato starch mixed with the baking powder, and we're supposed to sift it in, so just a little bit at a time. It is sticky, it gets everywhere, it'll be on everything. Okay, so we've got this pretty much mixed together. Now there is a little bit in the recipe that says 2 tablespoons of water if needed. So I've got a couple tablespoons of water set aside here. I don't think it needs it. I think we've got a pretty nice batter here. So, get rid of that, bring the spatula back. Cake pan, I've got it buttered and a parchment piece of paper in the bottom. Of course, there's no mention of what size cake pan to use. This is a 6-inch round. I think it's going to be, it's going to be more than fine. And no mention of oven temperature. So I've chosen 350 because, 350 is safe. There's no flavoring. I would say you could flavor this any way you wanted. A little bit of lemon zest, a little bit of orange zest, some almond extract, a little bit of rum, a little bit of whiskey. Instead of the water, if you wanted to, you could put in some whiskey or some rum or something like that. Limoncello would go really well in this cake, I think. There are many different ways that you could flavor this if you wanted to. Okay, into the oven for about 30 minutes. Ooh.
Hey, Glen. That's an interesting trick. Hey, friends.
I give you, what is it called?
I don't know.
I give you Casco potato flour sponge cake.
Casco?
Canada Starch Company.
Okay, now I know what Casco means. I'm like, Casco? Is that a place? I wish. Okay.
Potato flour sponge cake. So
it looks sponge cake. Like it's got the right color.
It is essentially the same cake as the Scotch Diet Cake that we had a couple of weeks ago.
That one was actually surprisingly good.
Yes. This one has no flavoring in it, though, and I'm a little bit worried. I think it probably needs the lemon or vanilla or something, but let's...
So what I find interesting, though, and then I don't know what happened, it's like super fluffy at the top, little dense on the bottom. I don't know if that's... Okay, so I'm going to do this. Because I find that change in density a little bit. It might just be how it was made. It might be that we didn't... Sorry.
Needs flavoring. Texture's amazing. Mm-hmm. Like the texture is really, really good. But it needs, like I said earlier, maybe some lemon rind, some orange rind, almond extract, a little bit of vanilla would probably not go amiss.
Cardamom, whatever makes you happy.
Oh, yeah, that'd be really good, wouldn't it? Mm-hmm. Needs a little bit of flavor.
I might have made it a little thinner too.
You could,
Yeah.
And I struggled with that. Do I make something that in a larger cake pan that is thinner, or
It's tough because it seems like the right size, and yet and that's the thing, right? The next pan out is probably too big.
too big? Of course,
I've already eaten the whole piece, so
strawberries or raspberry compote or cherry compote over top would
everything you do with a
would be
normal
amazing.
sponge cake, right? But it does have a good texture, and it isn't. It's actually quite.
So potato starch, corn starch would work really well. Almond flour would probably work really well.
Oh, that would even add a different flavor to it.
And those would all, this with almond flour and a little almond extract, the texture would be a little bit different with the almond flour, but it would still be really good. And those would all keep you in the gluten-free space. Mm-hmm. But if you don't have any of those, what you've got is all-purpose flour. Based on the diet cake from a couple weeks ago, all-purpose flour would work just as well on this.
So apparently it's a cake that you can make with whatever you got.
Pretty much. Pretty much. Baking is a science, except it's an art. And if you know how to make little substitutions, and I would substitute all of those things one for one, I wouldn't bother with varying densities and graphs and pie charts and
That's what you
spreadsheets. That's exactly who I am.
But if you are that person who needs to do that figuring, feel free.
Go right ahead. It's your kitchen.
And it's useful.
It's your kitchen. I'm just not that guy. I'm very much let's just throw it together and see what happens.
Let's make 3 of them. It'll be okay. If this one doesn't work out, we'll try it again.
Thanks for stopping by. See you again soon. Oh. Apparently the goose is getting fat, and everyone is going to need one of these really snazzy things under the tree.
You need a few hay pennies.
Yeah, you need a few hay pennies.